All right. Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in once again to Queen Ahmadiyyah TV, More Than Meets the Third Eye. I'm your host, Queen Ahmadiyyah, and this is your spiritual vitamins. So as you're coming in, please feel free to go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Be sure to click that notification bell and click the word all so you're notified each time the Queen Goddess goes live. Okay, I know I'm a little late, but alas, I made it. Okay. POP said, Queen, your content on Terrence Howard was outstanding as always. Thank you, beloved. I appreciate you. Okay, so listen, we're going to be talking about spiritual truths today. Okay, we're going to be talking about spiritual truths. I'm going to wait for a few more people to get in because they likely didn't send out notifications. All right, I just sent a couple of people an email. But so let's add some music to the stream today. Hold on just a second. Okay, so let's get ready to get into it. Okay, shout out to everyone in the chat and everyone tuned into the Queen, and shout out to the replay gang who'll be catching this later. So as I said, we're going to be talking about spiritual truths. And one of the first things, on our spiritual journey, or when we first embark on our spiritual journey, it's often because we've been prompted to, or because we know someone who's told us things about spirituality. They started trying to enlighten us. And then also there are some people who start doing it because they want rewards. They want the things that they feel are going to come with it. When we talk about manifesting, okay, some people hear about manifestation and how you can create your own reality and draw things into your life, which is perfectly fine to do. But we have to remember that you should not start the spiritual journey just because you want things. Okay, don't make it transactional. You should never take a transactional approach, because if you do that, you lose focus, or you don't really get the full impact of what it's really all about. Okay, we're going to gain things, we're going to gain abundance and draw things positive into our lives and alleviate the negative things if we are doing the right things, really putting in the work, okay, doing our shadow work, making better connections with the Most High, with the universe, with nature, and letting go of bad habits and negative patterns of thought and things like that. So all of those things will come to fruition eventually if you're doing the work. But the main thing to be focused on is raising your levels of consciousness and becoming your true self, your higher self, and knowing who you are and what your divine purpose is for being here on this earth. Because I find that the people that have the transactional mindset, that sometimes gets in the way of their spiritual journey. Okay, so let's talk about some of these spiritual truths. First of all, let me start by saying, and I've told you this before, we are spiritual beings on a human journey. Okay, we're not humans having a spiritual experience, but we're spiritual beings having a human experience. And everyone is walking a spiritual path, whether they're consciously doing so or not. All right. Thank you, Fat Boo, for becoming a member, beloved. I appreciate you. Peace, love, and blessings. Okay, and also speaking of memberships, we're going to start having special members only lives at least once a week. Okay, that's what we're going to do. And also there's a webinar coming up, and I'll give you all more information on that as as I get everything situated and it gets closer to the date. Okay. Now, here's the thing. Our soul knows the way to fulfill our destiny. Our soul knows the way to fulfill our destiny. Okay, so now let's break that down. Our destiny, it is for us to remember who we really are, or to find ourselves. Energy is who we actually are. Love is where we came from, and love is where we return after we leave this realm. Now, the body expresses and houses the soul for a short period of time, and this is called life. Now, some people feel that life is the angel to the soul while we're here on earth, or that the body that encompasses the soul is the angel to the soul here on earth. But at one point, I remember on my spiritual journey, I used to think that the soul, or I used to picture the soul as something that resides within the body, as if the soul was a little point of light somewhere at the center of my core. But then as my awareness deepened and I began to understand and delve deeper into spirituality, I came to realize that the soul is a much larger energy that actually reaches out and extends beyond the body into time and space. Okay, it is much larger and greater than where the body resides. So I've come to think of the body living within the soul rather than the soul just being in the body, and the soul extending beyond the body into the world. The soul is a timeless energy, whereas the body is of this world, of this time, and of this place. That's why when we leave here, the body goes back to the dust from whence it came, but the soul and spirit are eternal. So the light all around you, that's your spirit. That aura. This is the energy and the light of your soul animated in this plane of time and space, your life. Your soul is a great light and energy, one that exists beyond time and space. And it's all at once, the tiniest point of light in the darkness and the entire light of all that there is. You see, you can actually draw the light of your soul or the light of your spirit into the body with your breath or your focus and your attention. And this is what people should do when they find themselves in what some of us call a dark place. Okay, Jasmine says, yes, Queen, the soul lives on. Absolutely, beloved. Absolutely. So when you believe that your spirit knows, and well, let me just say this. The soul, it's the soul that actually knows the map and the geography of your destiny in this body. Now, when you believe that your spirit knows and your soul has the map of your future, that's when you begin to trust your spirit and you start to understand things better, and you'll start to experience a sense of peace that you can fulfill your soul's purpose, because there's no way for you not to do so. And as long as you're listening and you can trust that there's a part of you that always knows the way, that always is there to guide you, that inner voice, when you say things like, something told me to go here, or something told me not to go there. That inner voice, okay, that's the soul. That's also how the Most High communicates with us, because we are of the Most High, and the Most High resides within us. Now, not in some of these wicked, nefarious people. Okay, the Most High, they have become, and this is what I want you to pay careful attention to. You see, these people that engage in witchcraft and all these wicked things, worshiping Satan and all of those sorts of things, they have lost their connection. Okay, they've lost their connection to the divine power, to the divine source, to the Most High. Now, they can, of course, get it back, but they have to go through the proper channels like deliverance. Okay, they have to have what is called a spiritual cleansing to get back where they need to be, because the soul and spirit can be tarnished when you're doing the wrong thing. People say that they sell their souls. You can't actually sell your soul, because it isn't yours to sell. It actually belongs to the Most High. But you can be compromised. Okay, you can be compromised and get caught up in the wrong things and then have a tarnished soul or spirit, making you more likely to be attacked by demonic and negative entities and energies. Okay, you've lost the divine source that was connected to you, that empowers you, and that fills you with light. And as I told you many times, everything is energy. It's just sometimes easy to forget that everyone and everything is connected. There's no distance between you and the closest rock, the ground underneath your feet, or the person in the car that just went zooming by. Everyone has a spark of light deep within, waiting to be fanned by the flame of awakening. There is wisdom in your emotions. They're trying to tell you something. They're trying to get your attention, to remind you of who you really are and why you came here. Some people don't know what their divine purpose is. They don't even know that they actually have a divine purpose, but we all do. And it's up to you to figure out what that is. And you usually tend to find these things out when you embark upon your spiritual journey. That's when you start deep diving into the research. You are more open to new information, because sometimes, we don't want to hear things that are not really familiar to us, because we've been so indoctrinated with things like religion. Now, I'm not speaking against religion, but let's just think about it. Religion is something that came from man. It did not come from God. God did not create religion. Man did. Now, some of you may not want to believe that, but it's absolutely the fact. Okay? We were born spiritual, not religious, and there is a difference. So all living things on earth have consciousness, okay? Now, there's a poet named Rumi who put it so eloquently and beautifully when he wrote that consciousness sleeps in minerals, dreams in plants, wakes up in animals, and becomes self-aware in humans. Everything has awareness, even if it's silent or expresses itself in different languages, just as blossoms on a flower open at their own pace. So too our souls mature and become aware of their own energy at different times. Everyone and everything is opening to its own awareness on its own timing. You see, you may be farther along on your spiritual journey than someone that's close to you, and you may be telling them things that they don't understand, that they don't believe in, because they're still caught up in their old beliefs. And it's not anything to ridicule them about, because at one point before you started embarking on your spiritual journey, you likely thought and felt some of the same things that they think and feel. Everybody has to go at their own pace. See, this is the problem, is some people try to force their beliefs on other people, which is never a good thing. And that's another reason why some people actually shy away from religion, because everybody seems to think that their religion is the best one, that they know what's best. And then they take the information that they've learned and gathered, and they try to impose that on other people. Especially if they think that this is someone, who basically is doing things that they're not supposed to be doing. They think that it's for them to go out and try to tell these people about God, and what to do and how to pray and all of these things. Well, it's always good to tell people about God. We should always talk about God and try to enlighten people and bring people closer to God. But we don't have to do that through religion. I feel like it's best to do it through spirituality. Okay. Some people don't even want to hear about religion when you're trying to, especially if they already have a religion that they've been practicing, and then you're trying to cross them over into something else, or trying to enlighten them, so you think, and trying to tell them about a different religion. This can lead to chaos, confusion, people arguing, upset. Some people get really upset about their beliefs because they take it very seriously, and that's something personal to them, and especially if they've been indoctrinated. That's why if I'm talking to Christians and I'm trying to enlighten them about spiritual practices or esoteric information or allegories in the Bible, I gauge their body language, their responses, and their demeanor while I'm speaking to them. Because if it comes across that they're, standoffish, or they're not receptive to the information I'm giving them, I don't want to offend them or make them think I'm trying to impose my beliefs on them. So I'll just cut it short. But if they're receptive and they seem interested, or they seem like they're excited, because this is something they never heard before, then I'll give them the information. Now, Master said can lead to loss. Do you mean that some people are lost? I'm not exactly sure how you meant that, but I will say this. One thing about it is some people get lost within themselves. They're their own worst enemies. They allow the negative things about themselves, the negative aspects about themselves, to just hinder their growth. They're always thinking low vibrational. They're always paranoid, thinking somebody's, up to something or whatever. They can never just relax and absorb information. They seem to think that people have ulterior motives. And, sometimes people do. But if you can find someone that is a spiritual person who is trying to enlighten you, trying to share information with you or whatever, trying to help you along your spiritual journey, that's someone you should be able to sit down and talk to them about it, and basically share knowledge, share information. Jonah said, "In you are Hebrew, the Most High will give you clear understanding." All praise. Okay, exactly. Namaste says, depending on one's upbringing to believe, and then other religion. Right. Absolutely. My mother used to tell us that two things you shouldn't discuss with people is religion and politics, because people quickly get offended. Okay, if you're talking about political parties that they're not for, or religious practices that they're not used to, that can always lead to chaos. So you have to be very careful with that. But spirituality is usually not a problem, because spirituality is within all of us. Okay, Spirituality is within all of us. And like I said, sometimes we don't know it. We think that only when we become aware and start doing certain things like meditating, practicing the art of visualization, that's when we think that we become spiritual. But you're already spiritual because you were born a spiritual being. You just are not aware of all of the information that's available to you sometimes, or you may not have been privy to it because you've been taught other things. And here's the thing, too, some churches actually teach against these spiritual practices. They tell you should meditate, you should manifest. And all of that is crazy because it is actually so hypocritical. Because think about how we pray. Now, think about this. When we pray and we ask God for things, now when you pray and ask God for things and you really believe that God's going to give it to you, then when it shows up, you say, wow, God answered my prayers. God answered your prayers, but you also manifested because you believed in what you were asking for. Now, those people who pray and have no faith and have no belief, and they're just praying just to hear themselves do it, or they think that's what they need to do, but they really don't believe it's going to happen, their prayers don't get answered. And that's because they're of a negative mindset and they're not helping to manifest it. Okay? God gives us the power. You can literally answer your own prayers through God who dwells within you. All you have to do is believe. But some people, they just don't believe, and then they'll get upset and say, well, God never answers my prayers. Well, that's not God's fault that your prayers didn't get answered. Clearly, you didn't believe it in the first place. So, O ye of little faith, like it says in the Bible, right? Now, our bodies, our emotions, our breath, our movements are all energy. And we can begin to understand and be guided by these energies in our lives by sensing and learning how to interpret these feelings. It's through our focus and our attention, movements, emotions and breath that we can engage with the world all around us and begin to learn to move these energies. Now, if we choose to center our awareness on any of these things or all of them, we can help to light the spark of awareness within us that knows we are all connected and can show us the way our soul has planned for us in this lifetime. Likes everyone, please don't forget to like and share. Thank you in advance. Now, another spiritual truth is that our words are very powerful. You see, words are seeds. Words are power. Every time you say a word, a seed is planted in yourself, okay, in others, and in the world. This seed will grow as you continue to use these words. Think about in the Bible when it says the power of life and death is in the tongue. What does that mean? The power of life and death is in the tongue. Because we speak things into existence. We speak things into reality. And what is power? Power is energy. Power is energy. So it's the energy of which we say things. Because here's the thing. I want you to think about this. You know how, back in the ancient times of our ancestors, our words were so much more powerful. And over time, they lost some of that power. And that's because people started mixing words. For example, you may work all day at a job, come home 8 hours later, and your feet are tired and they hurt. And you kick off your shoes and say, oh my goodness, my feet are killing me. Well, of course, we know that our feet cannot kill us, but that's a figure of speech, right? That's something that we say. So you see little things like that. Those are examples of how our words lost power. But when the Bible says the power of life and death is in the tongue, power is energy. So it's the energy with which you say things. Because you can get mad and say something and not even really mean it. You're saying it out of anger. It may not happen. Now, if you say it enough, it just might. But What are your intentions when you speak these words? Are you saying it out of anger, or do you really want and hope for this to happen? Like, for example, if someone gets angry and wishes death on someone that ticked them off, there's a difference than if you just said that out of anger and you didn't really mean it. But if you really meant it from the depths of your soul, like in your heart, that's how you feel about this person, you really are wishing death upon them. You spoke that with power, with an energy that absolutely can make it happen. Now, some people think they have to go out here and go to these people that practice black magic and get spells and incantations and nefarious things to try to make things happen to people. But in reality, if you say something consistently enough, this is why we should watch what we say, especially to the people that we love and care about. And you shouldn't be saying those things about anybody, period. You should not be wishing death on anybody, because here's the thing. Though the power of life and death is in the tongue, there's also a thing known as karma. So just as you're wishing these things on someone else, those same things come back to you. Those are just the laws of the universe. So it's very important to think wisely before you speak, and to choose your words carefully, and to not say things that you really don't mean out of anger, because you're still putting that negativity out there. And if you continually do those things every time you get angry, now you have made the energy stronger. And so now the universe is asking itself, okay, is this what they really want to happen? Because they keep saying it. They keep speaking these words. Okay, so it's very important. Sometimes it's best to bite your tongue. And one thing about it is, one thing that I notice about people is people will get so mean, nasty, and disrespectful when they're angry with the very people or person that they say they love the most. Why do people feel so comfortable? Many people, not everyone, but why do so many people feel so comfortable saying disrespectful, rude, nasty things to people that they claim to love? But then they'll go to work and their boss will get on their case and talk to them real crazy, and they won't dare to say any of those things because they need that job. They know they need their job. They know they need their money. But what about the person you supposedly care about? You don't need them? Oh, you do need them. You do want them. But you just know that 9 times out of 10, they're not going to go anywhere. That you can just go back and apologize, and they'll just come running back. But what you have to remember is that over time, speaking to people that way, like my grandmother used to say, even a dog gets tired. Okay, so you can keep saying things to people, because some people think they can treat you any kind of way, say whatever to you, and then all they have to do when you get upset or mad about it is just say, oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, that doesn't work for me. Okay, that doesn't work for me, because I need to see actions. You can't just tell me you're sorry. And then here's the thing. If you've been doing something over and over and over, are you really sorry? I wouldn't think so. But some people will allow other people to break their boundaries, to disrespect them, to lie to them, to treat them like trash, okay? To treat them like an old Kleenex. And then all the person has to do is come back and say they're sorry. And you just keep putting up with it. When you do that, you're really just setting yourself up for failure. Because eventually one day you're going to get tired. It may not be right now. You may think you're never going to get rid of this person. You're never going to leave them. You can't live without them. But one day, you're going to come to the realization that you absolutely can live without them. You're going to come to the realization that you're tired of living in chaos, that there has to be something better. So why even waste your time dealing with someone who's disrespectful? I think it's a good idea, in fact, to give people the same energy that they give you. And think about this. In any relationship, whether it's intimate, a personal relationship, a friendship or whatever, the person who actually, how can I put this nicely? I'll say it like this. People do what you allow them to do, okay? People do what you allow them to do. And here's the thing too. The person who tends to care the most in a relationship, always, not most of the time, They always get the short end of the stick. I promise you. You know why that person always gets the short end of the stick? Because the other person doesn't really care. And even if they do care, they don't care as much. So they're not going to be the one that's always putting up with stuff. They'll be the one to lead. You start doing stuff to them that they don't like, they'll be out of there. But the person who cares so much and wants so much to desperately hold on to the relationship will put up with more and more BS because they want to hold it all together. So just think about that. And you can ask yourself, if there's ever been a relationship that you were in and you put up with a whole bunch of crap, that's likely because you were the person that cared the most. Now, I'm not telling you not to care about anybody. What I'm telling you is never care more about a person than they care about you. Okay? It should be 50-50, not 60-40, not 75-25. Because you'll find that you're the one settling. And that person that you're taking all that crap from, they can just get up and walk out at any given moment. Then what are you going to do? And then you're going to be feeling like, I put up all of that and then they still left. Yeah, that's exactly what happens. Okay, so please pay attention. But I'm off track. Let's get back to the spiritual truths. So we're talking about the power of words. Okay, so words are seeds and words have power. And every time you say a word, a seed is planted in yourself, others, and the world. Now, this seed will grow as you continue to use those words. This reminder indicates that it is important to reflect on whether you wish to plant seeds that create sabotaging thoughts, fears, anxiety, or hate, or whether you wish to plant seeds that create hope, love, and inspiration. How you use words and language indicates your belief systems about the world, and your belief system determines whether you are a creator or a victim, whether you're powerful or disempowered. How's your relationship going? Does the person talk to you crazy? Do they disrespect you and you just put up with it? If so, you're disempowered. Are you the person that doesn't take any BS and you won't stand for someone to talk to you recklessly without putting them in check? Because that's powerful. Some people can't do it. It may not seem like a big deal to you because you're so used to being assertive and defending yourself. But some people don't know how to stand up for themselves. They've been disempowered. And that usually starts sometimes when we're children. That usually starts when we're children. If you have parents who talk down to you, or if you're a parent who talks down to your children, you're doing them a disservice because you're disempowering them. You see, children who are shy, in some cases, they may just be shy because they're just, embarrassed, or they just, feel a little insecure or whatever. But 9 times out of 10, think about this. Children who are shy usually are that way because of how they're treated in the home. If you're a parent who scolds the child loudly, raising voices, cursing at them, rather than talking to them calmly and explaining to them what they did wrong and how they can do better next time, if you're one of those aggressive, hostile parents who's always talking down and condescending to a child, that child, I guarantee you, will be shocked because they may feel inadequate. They may be afraid of rejection or afraid of making someone upset because they think they're going to get a negative reaction like they do in the home. But if you're someone who constantly encourages your child, lifts them up, tells them good things about themselves, and makes them feel good about themselves, they're not going to be shy. They'll be much more outgoing because they won't have anything holding them back. That really helps with their self-esteem. So just keep that in mind. Just keep that in mind. So are you a creator or a victim? When we focus on changing our negative self-talk or self-deprecating tendencies, we can begin to live life from our highest potential. You can start to actually maximize your potential. Think about how that movie, I think the movie was called Lucy. I never saw that movie, but I read about it. When they supposedly were talking about, taking something that enabled people to use 100% of their brain. That's definitely using your highest potential. Now, we know we don't use 100% of our brain, but if you want to reach your highest potential, then you should focus on positive things and focus on always practicing self elevation. There's always room to grow. A wise man told me when I was a teenager, and I always remind myself of this, that there's always room for improvement. You know what people think that there's not room for improvement? I'm so glad you asked. The people that think they know everything. People who think they know everything are so annoying to me because they can't be taught, because they already think they know it all. So there are many ways that we can use words to create blessings. Prayers are the words of power that we speak aloud out of our hearts when we wish to connect with our highest self or our connection to all things. You see, it's important to remember that the words we use in our daily lives make a difference in what we create for ourselves and for the planet and for the people around us. And another spiritual truth is the fact that healing comes from within you. Curing is the business of traditional medicine. That's curing. There's a difference. You see, healing comes from deep within you. Now, as part of our human journey, we have signed up and agreed to experience numerous challenging cycles in life and different obstacles that we have to get over. Thus, we're always about to enter or are in the process of a transformative cycle of death and rebirth in some area of our life as part of the path of our unique destiny. And as part of our human journey, we each experience numerous cycles of death and rebirth. Our heart's desires are divine impulses meant to motivate us, to guide us, and inspire us to become the greatest expressions of who we can be. I consider myself a reflection of the Most High's own creation. That's why I don't care what people say about me. Well, I'm not going to say that. Here's what I will say. So I want you all to think about this. Remember on the channel, on the other channel yesterday, when I went off on the young lady who was disrespectful and said that I was clueless? I was offended by that. Now, why was I offended by that? Well, I was offended by that because the thing that I love the most about myself is my level of intellect. That's why I'm always studying, researching, learning something new every day. I can never know enough. There's so much information. I always want to know as much as possible. That's one of the favorite things about myself. Now, I bring this up because a friend of mine called me yesterday because they were watching that live. And they said to me, Queen, they said, you know what's funny about you? And I said, what? They said, when you were exposing Tariq Nasheed, they said, when you were exposing him and Wig Dillard, and some of their subscribers were trying to go in on you because they were mad, and they would call you out of your name, or they would say something about your looks. One of them tried to say you were cockeyed and all that stuff. They said you laughed at them. You didn't even get mad. And I said, yeah, because I don't care. Because what someone thinks about how I look is none of my business. Okay, I love me. Okay, and as long as I love myself, nobody can say anything that's going to hurt my feelings or make me feel bad. She said, but when that lady told you last night that you were clueless, you cursed her out. And I said, yes, I absolutely did. Because now that offended me. Okay, don't ever try to undercut my intellect. Okay, I was definitely offended by that. And I bet you all didn't even notice that, because usually if someone's talking crazy, I just laugh it off because it doesn't bother me at all. But that ticked me off before I knew it. Okay, that ticked me off because, like I said, I know that I'm very intellectual, and I know that I do my research, and I don't like being anyone trying to insult me on that. Now, I'm not going to say I'm the smartest person in the world. Of course not. I study all the time just so I can learn more. But the bottom line is, I'm more concerned with my intellect than anything else about myself. That's just my favorite thing else. That's my favorite thing about myself. Now, some people, their looks are the most important things about themselves, but to me, my brain is, honey, okay? My brain is. That's why now, let me tell you something. Um, I actually do brain exercises. Yeah, you can look it up and you can do them too. But I do brain exercises, okay? Because as far as I'm concerned, our brains are just like our muscles. The more you use them, the stronger they get, okay? Now, some people don't use their brains. Okay, trust me. I mean, they may just use for everyday regular things, is what I'm saying, but they don't really use their brains. Because, see, me personally, I try to tap into parts of our brain or my brain that everyone doesn't use. That's why I'm so spiritually in tune. I literally try to use parts of my brain that the average person doesn't use. Okay? We all should be trying to use more brain power. We all should be trying to obtain as much wisdom and intellect as we possibly can. Now, here's the thing. Our heart's desires are divine impulses meant to motivate us and guide us and inspire us to become the greatest expressions of who we can be. And for many of us, these deepest desires have become buried beneath the debris of painful experiences, negative interpretations, fear, and resignation. Where does all that come from? Well, it usually comes from trauma. Now, it could have been childhood trauma, it could have been trauma that you had from a past relationship, or just from something tragic that could have happened to you. You could have lost someone important to you in your life. But we're often unable to hear, respond, and to be fueled by certain messages when we're blocked off, when we're like focusing in the negative, because then your chakras are not aligned. You're unable to get these positive signals that the brain is trying to send. You're disrupting the flow of energy around you. And sometimes that's why we have to step out of our comfort zone, step out of what we know and try something that we don't know. But some people are complacent and they don't want to do anything different. They don't want to go down this road because they've never been there before. I'll just go down this road because this is the way I've always gone. I know what's at the end. They don't want to try anything new. And so they just settle for a mundane life. They just live for the day, never planning for tomorrow, never expecting good things from the future, talking down on themselves, feeling forlorn, okay? Sitting back hating, watching and waiting to see what everybody else is doing. And why do they have a new car and I can't get one? Why do they have this job and I can't get one? Well, perhaps you should spend more of your time, rather than worrying about and being fixated on what someone else has or what they're getting, fixate on yourself. Because I'm a firm believer in whatever somebody else has, if it's something you want, you can absolutely have the same thing. But sitting there hating on someone else, that's not going to help you to get it at the end of the day. That's right. Gwendolyn says words are power. Exactly. Exactly. So while challenges are unavoidable, there's always going to be obstacles that we have to overcome. And, this isn't necessarily a bad thing, because sometimes these things strengthen us. It's good for us to sometimes go through trials and tribulations so that we can see or realize how good we have it. Some people don't realize exactly how good they have it. They complain about things that are so minuscule. I mean, and here's the thing. I have noticed that the people that are the most negative, they tend to worry about petty things. They don't have health issues. 9 times out of 10, at least the ones I know personally that I'm talking about that are so negative, they don't have health issues. Okay. They may be upset because they don't have the job they want, or they feel like they're not making enough money. These are all things to stop complaining about. Stop whining about it and be about it. Because you can always go find a job that's paying you more money. And if you don't have a job that's paying you enough, you can get another job. You can work two jobs. There's different things you can do. You can start your own business, become an entrepreneur, but there's always things you can come up with. So that's nothing to be crying about. The time that you're wasting crying and being all upset about it, you could be using that to be productive, because that's absolutely counterproductive. How is crying and whining going to get you what you want? It isn't. It absolutely isn't. And they complain about little minuscule things that they can absolutely fix. All they have to do is change their minds, change the thoughts that they're thinking, take out the negative, start practicing metacognition, which is when you think about how you think. Are you thinking negative most of the time? Are you pessimistic most of the time? That's why you don't have the things you want in life. That's why things are not going the way you want them to go. You can easily fix that. It is literally so easy. It is literally so easy. But then you have these people over here playing the victims, whining and crying over BS that's not even that serious. But then if you look at somebody like my friend who's fighting for her life, who's on oxygen indefinitely, who wants to live their life walking around pulling an oxygen tank behind them? But you know what? Her attitude is positive. She's glad to be alive. Some people don't realize how good they have it. They don't stop to think about how they have such good health. Health is something that you can't buy, right? Sometimes sickness comes and somebody could be gone just like that in a twinkling of an eye. That's why, rather than thinking about how things are not the way you want them to be, shouldn't you be focusing on things that are good in your life? That's how you attract positivity. That's how you create a more positive reality. And that's also what helps you to get to the things that you actually want. Think about being healthy and happy and having people who love and care about you. Think of all the positive things. See, when people start thinking about self-destruction, those people who get to the point and they're so forlorn and so sad and so downtrodden that they don't even want to be here anymore, they start thinking about how the world is too much and they can't stay in another day and they just want to leave. These people don't tend to think about that's very selfish, because are they thinking about the people who love them that they're going to leave behind? Are they trying to resolve the problems and issues that they have that could make their life better? No, they're stuck in a negative cycle. And what happens when you get in that negative cycle is you have these malevolent entities, we call them demons. They start speaking to you. They start encouraging and influencing your thoughts. I don't mean encouraging you, I mean discouraging you and influencing your thoughts. They start making you see everything is so bad, like it's never going to get better. And then people fall for it. And then some people sadly take a permanent solution to a temporary situation, something that they could have easily fixed if only they had redirected their focus. Ask yourself, where is your focus? What do you hold dear to you? What do you think about on a regular basis? Are you always complaining about your job, about the money that you make or don't make? Are you always complaining about the people who sit on you or the people who have done you wrong? Or do you think about the people who are kind and considerate, who love and adore you? The people who are there for you in the times of need. What are you focusing your thoughts and energies on? If you're focusing on the negative, that's where you'll stay. And how do you manifest anything besides negativity when you are in fact being negative? Ask yourself that. We all need to be trying to rise into our higher selves. We're often unable to hear, respond to, and be fueled by messages from the universe when we're not, because we're not paying attention, because we're not listening. Now, while challenges are absolutely unavoidable, that's just something we have to go through. This is something that also, at the same time, can help us to become more intellectual. Because if you learn from your mistakes, or even better yet, learn from the mistakes of others, so you don't have to go through those things, right? And if you know how to transform the darkness of confusion and the pain or the trauma into light, the light of new potential, then you can create a new reality, a new life. You see, life isn't random. Your experiences that you go through are meaningful, even the painful ones. All experiences are a call to the remembering of our soul's wisdom. Even when bad things happen, you should try to make it into a teachable moment, make it into a positive. Say, you know what, that happened to me, but the next time I'll know what not to do. Make it something that you learn from so you don't have to repeat the same pattern. Most of our major problems, social, environmental, etc., they could easily be solved if enough people just started to shift to a new way of being, a new way of thinking. If we could just simply do that, we could just change so many things in our lives. A way of being that is true to your own unique reason for being alive at this time, and understand how we may offer our gifts to level up our human experience, to raise our consciousness and come into harmony with every living thing on the planet and even the earth itself. How we can become more spiritually awakened and more connected to the divine source, the Most High. And then, some of us are always in a rush. We want everything in a hurry. Everything has to be right now. We don't want to wait. We have no patience. But time is actually an illusion. You think you're going to run out of time? The future exists only in our imaginations. Our souls exist in a place of no time. You see, time is part of our human experience of life on this earth. And as aging and the grace that comes with the passing of time, this is a time to gain knowledge and wisdom. Going within is the key to returning to the place of no time where all the answers lie. The answers are within you. When you surrender to a higher wisdom and higher goal, the divine plan of your life begins to unfold naturally in perfect timing. And this is because our spiritual and physical makeup, the present, is the only point from which the past or the future can be changed. The point of the present is the only place where any action can become effective towards a different reality. I'm not speaking metaphorically. In the most intimate of terms, your past and future are modified simply by your present actions. Now think about that. Your past and future are modified by your present actions, by what you're doing right here and right now. And we could not exist here without our spirit. Who is the one breathing your breath? Is that you? Who's behind the breath? Where does the energy of your being come from? Where does that energy come from? Does it come from the breath of your body or the life behind that breath? We're always connected to our higher self. We just can't always reach our higher selves or rise into our higher selves because we're not doing the work. We don't understand. We haven't gotten that far on our spiritual journey. And when you're confused and you have questions, or you're on your spiritual journey and you don't really see the big picture yet, ask the ancestors to guide you along the way. Our ancestors, once they leave this realm, they often come back as our spirit guides. And the energies who made agreements with our souls to help steer us on the path toward the goal of awakening to love is very often our ancestors too. You see, they're always with us and waiting patiently for us to ask for help. That's all you have to do. You can pray to the Most High and to your ancestors. Now, we live in a state of free will, and so, they cannot interfere with our free will, of course, but if we ask them with intention for our highest good, They do have creative ways of helping us on our path in perfect timing. And think about that, because people believe that God has angels, right? And a lot of people believe that these angels protect us, guardian angels, and that these angels, they save people from different things, or they warn us or whatever in times of danger or whatever. Those angels are your ancestors. Now, I know they show them and depict them with wings and all of that and not looking like people of my skin tone. But at the end of the day, angels are your ancestors. And all you have to do is call them when you're in time of need. If you have a question, you can absolutely, and listen, here's the thing. Now, don't sit up here and think, don't sit up here and get it twisted and think that I'm talking about, oh, talking to spirits and, conjuring and anything. No, no, that's absolutely not what I'm talking about. You can speak to them in your mind. You can pray to the ancestors, just like when you're regularly praying. Okay, your ancestors are not the demons that we need not be dealing with. Totally different. Now, when you have people, let's say, for example, Sloan Bella, who talks to spirits, so she claims. Do you think she's talking to her ancestors? No, she's not. She's conjuring spirits or talking to these spirits of, I don't know what these spirits are. They could be demons for all I know. That's why I wouldn't trust it. But she says, oh, I was talking to the spirit of Kim Porter, and she names people that have passed away. These people have no connection to her. How does she think she's talking to these people? She could be absolutely talking to demons, or maybe she actually is talking to them and communicating with their spirit. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about people who are actually your ancestors. Okay? People who are actually your ancestors. People that cared for you in this world when they were here. People who protected you and told you what was best for you. Or ancestors that you don't even know, that you never met, that they left this realm before you ever entered it. But they're still your ancestors nonetheless. And you can absolutely talk to them. Now, with that all being said, most guidance comes from within through a process of intuition and listening. Sometimes you may hear a voice that sounds wiser than your own, or you may get an idea in your head that seems inspired. I get these all the time, and I call them epiphanies. Now, these messages can be so subtle or loud, but neither are more or less powerful than the other. It's important to hone your intuition and hearing so that you can hear your internal guidance that is leading the way to answer your prayers. Messages can also come from other people in words that they speak, gestures that they do that remind us of someone or something important to us. Messages can also be received through seemingly random acts, what some people call coincidence. I don't believe in coincidence. Sometimes things are synchronicity, due to synchronicity. Okay? A billboard sign, a magazine left open on a table with words that speak directly to your heart, and also from nature all around us. You ever think about something and then you look up and see something that reminds you of what you were just thinking? Let me give you an example. Let me give an example. And I think I told you all this before, but anyway, I'm going to tell it again. I was at this herb store some years ago, and I had this pendant that was a pendant of the Archangel Michael. Okay. And I would say the prayer of Archangel Michael every day. I still say that prayer every day. But so anyway, I was on the phone with someone. I was sitting out in my car waiting for the herbal store to open, right? It was more like a holistic store. They sold herbs and, different types of candles, for meditation and stones and crystals, things like that. Like a metaphysical store, so to speak. But anyway, I was sitting out in the car waiting for the store to open. And so as I'm sitting there, I was on the phone with someone and they were telling me something they were going through. So I was trying to motivate and encourage them. And I told them, pray about it. Talk to God about it. I have conversations with God all the time. Talk to the Archangel Michael. I said, say the prayer of Archangel Michael. And the person had never even heard of the prayer before. So I recited the prayer to them. Okay. So then a few minutes later, the store opened and I went inside. And as I'm standing in there and I got all the things that I wanted to get, and I'm standing in the line. Actually, there wasn't a line, it was like two people in the store. But I'm standing there waiting to pay for my items, and something in my spirit said, look down on the shelf to your left. And so I looked, and when I looked, I saw this book. It was called The Miracles of Archangel Michael. So did I think that was a coincidence? No, because I don't believe in coincidence. I knew that was synchronicity because I was literally just sitting in my car reading or reciting his prayer to my friend. And I was also wearing a pendant with Archangel Michael. So for me to see a book that said the miracles of Archangel Michael, I said, that is synchronicity. So I picked up the book. Now, mind you, I didn't bring my debit card with me. I just had like the cash on me that I was going to pay for these things. This was years ago. And so I picked up the book and looked at it. And it was a really nice book, hardback, nice cover and all that. And I said, wow, I wonder how much this book costs. Probably cost about $35. This is what I'm thinking in my mind. And so then I said, well, I don't have the money for it right now. Maybe I'll come back and get it later. So let me just ask the lady how much it costs, right? And hopefully it'll still be here when I come back. So I asked the lady, and this was a lady who didn't look like me. And I asked her, I said, excuse me, I said, how much is this book? And she looked at the book and she looked at me and she said, you want it? And I said, yes, but I don't have the money right now. I'll come back and get it. And she said, if you want that book, you can have it. And I said, for free? And she was like, yeah. And I said, you're serious? And she was like, yeah. And I said, well, thanks. And I said, I say the prayer of Archangel Michael every day. And I was literally just sitting out in my car waiting for you to open. And I was reciting that prayer to someone. And I said, look at my pendant. And I showed it to her that I had an Archangel Michael pendant. And she said, well, that just lets me know I gave it to the right person. She said, my spirit told me to give you that book. Now, I just want y'all to pay attention, okay? I just want you all to pay attention. And things like that happen to me all the time. I'm not even joking. Things like that happen to me all the time. So sometimes when you say something, or you might be talking to somebody about something, and then you go somewhere and you see a poster or a vehicle or something drive by, like those big 18-wheeler trucks or something with a name on it, for example. Like that same day later, I saw a big truck that had Michael on it. Okay, when I was driving down the highway. So when you see things like that, that is synchronicity. And you should always pay attention to synchronicity. Okay? Because that is the universe trying to give you a sign, trying to show you something, trying to send you a message. And sometimes it's the ancestors. Stacy says, Queen Ahmadiyyah, I am wearing an Archangel Michael pendant. Okay? Now see that? That's synchronicity, beloved. That's synchronicity for me and you. Okay? So please pay attention because the universe is telling us both something. All right? Reggie said, me too, Queen. I call that waking in the spirit and truth, okay? Or walking in the spirit and truth. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, with that all being said, like I told you, messages can come from other people in the words they speak, gestures, and just different things or whatever. But you have to be paying attention to your surroundings. Now, another spiritual truth is that self-doubt and fear can hold many of us trapped for years and years and never allow us to change, never allow us to evolve and move forward, keep us stuck in a rut and stagnant. We're always complaining and whining, and we wonder why we can't get what we want. It's due to the negative thinking, the self-doubt, and the fear. Now, it's a myth that we figure it out first, and then we move on with what we know. Some people spend years just being in this mindset of lack, being in a mindset of worry, anxiety, stress, trauma. never understanding the power that they have within them, that they have unique and powerful spiritual gifts. Some people call these soul gifts. Some people don't realize that. They don't even believe in it. They never heard of it. Nobody ever talked to them or told them about it. And if you tell them about your spiritual gifts, they think you sound crazy. But here's the thing. If you want to create the life that you want to experience, then you need to begin to tap into your inner wisdom and learn to source your unique power and your spiritual gifts. You can't just be so indoctrinated by things that you've been taught that really don't even make sense to you. Because I know some of the stuff that we've been indoctrinated to think and believe don't make sense to us when we really think about it now that we're adults. Okay, because I'm going to give you an example. If you're a grown person right now and you grew up in the church and you are a Christian or were a Christian and you grew up being told that Daniel was swallowed by a whale and stayed in the belly of the whale for 3 whole days. If you still really believe that, you need to wake up, because that's an allegory. Okay? That's an allegory. Like, I know some people really still believe these stories. Now, they all sounded convincing when we were children because we didn't know any better. But as you get older, please tell me you don't still believe that. Okay? Please tell me you don't. Because that's just not what happened. Okay? You see, we have to realize and understand that much of the things in the Bible was purposely written to confuse people so that you wouldn't understand the hidden truth in it. Okay? Gwendolyn says gratitude is powerful. Yes, absolutely. That's why we should always have an attitude of gratitude. Reggie says Noah never brought 2 of every animal on the ark. Exactly. Ask yourself, what did they all eat? You try taking 2 of every animal, okay? And here's the thing. The scripture actually says that he brought 2 of every unclean animal, but I think it was 7 of the clean animals. So that's even more, the clean animals. And with that all being said, what did he feed the lions? Okay, the tigers. What did they eat on the ark? Ah, okay, ask yourself. It makes no sense, right? And they can't make it make sense. Okay, that's clearly an allegory. All right. Now, the greatest loss in life is the unlived life. Some people are not living, they're just existing from day to day. They've never traveled outside of the state that they're in. They've never traveled outside of the country. They don't engage and socialize with people. They don't have any friends. They're perfectly fine sitting at home being a couch potato. Now, I'm not going to say there's anything wrong with being a couch potato because, I don't just hang out in the streets either all the time, but I do live life and have fun. I like to laugh. I like to go out and have a good time with friends and family. I love to teach people things and interact with people. But some people, they don't do any of that. They just are couch potatoes who stay stuck to themselves and they just live a mundane life. And it's like, you're not really living. You're just existing, like you're just here. Have you ever asked yourself, what are you here for? Did God just bring you into this realm so that you can just sit on your couch every day and watch TV so you can be programmed by the tell lie vision? It tells lies to your vision. Reggie said you can run a business from your Reggie, okay, that's the bright side of it, beloved. You can absolutely run a business from your couch. Reggie said, don't be lazy. Right. But you have to be interactive with people, not a whole bunch of people, but you should at least have a circle that you can talk to about things so you can learn. See, here's the thing. We learn from other people. We learn from other people, right? None of us knows everything, but it's always so good. Uncle Girl Rising said her mom calls it the idiot box. Okay, exactly. So it's good to interact with other people. It makes us feel good, right? We can laugh and just get joy from other people or sharing and trading knowledge with other people. That's why I like social media, to learn different things, to spread knowledge, to get research or whatever. All that other negative stuff that's on social media, I don't fool with that, really. I try not to. I remember I used to be on social media. I would get up early, and if I'm going back and forth beefing with somebody over something, this is so stupid. Let me tell y'all something. Do you all know why I started doing live streams? I'm so glad you asked. Because I used to be on Facebook. I used to be on Facebook years ago, and I would be on there beefing with people who don't like people who look like me. And they'd be saying all kind of crazy stuff, and I'd be saying crazy stuff back to them, and we'd be going at it until I get tired and log off. And then as soon as I wake up the next morning, I log back on and see who was saying what, and then start going in again. So let me tell you what made me realize how foolish and counterproductive that was. I got up one morning at 6 o'clock, and I was looking for comments for somebody I had been beefing with the day before. And then so I started responding to them. By the time I looked at the clock again, now mind you, this was literally 6 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday. By the time I looked at the clock again, it was 1 o'clock, y'all. It was 1 o'clock. And I said, are you kidding me? You mean to tell me, because the time passed so fast because I was just going in back and forth. And I was like, are you kidding me? I've been on here for over 5 or 6 hours arguing with this idiot. I said, this is so dumb and such a waste of time and so unproductive. I will never do this again. I said, you know what? If I'm going to be on the internet for all those hours, I should at least be doing something constructive and productive. You know what I'm saying? Researching and learning something or giving information for other people to learn from. That is what made me start doing broadcasts. That's what made me start posting live streams. Because I'm sitting up here really wasting my time arguing and being a whole idiot. I mean, it's so low vibrational because I was just so mad at the stuff they were saying. And I'm saying stuff to try to make them mad. It was all ridiculous. But see, some of y'all still do it. Some of y'all still do it. And that's why I always ask people who troll people, who come on people's channels and talk crazy and talk about what you're talking about on the channel and this and that. I'm like, okay, well, if you don't like what the person's posting, why didn't you just scroll past? Because I know that it's counterproductive. And then people who continuously do that, what do they have going on in real life? You got time to sit on the internet for hours every day arguing over foolish BS? What do you really have going on? Couldn't you be trying to make some money somewhere? That's all I'm saying. That's what I thought of it. I'm like, honey, I'm not going to sit up here and wasting all these hours. I could have been in a whole job at this point. Okay, wasting my whole Saturday being a fool. Swift said, it's why I'm so woke now. Okay. Darnell said, I would read the whole argument. Not read the whole argument. I used to do that too. Okay. When I see other, let me tell y'all something. It was so crazy and nefarious. Let me tell y'all something. I had these Hebrew brothers that followed me and stuff, and I followed them, right? And so it's like when I would start beefing with somebody, I would tag them so they can join in and help me go at them. It was all so ridiculous, okay? And then if one of them speak with somebody, then they tag us and we all just go at them for hours. Talk about a waste of time, okay? Reggie said, honey, now's the time to be woke. I know that's right, but you know what? I'll tell you what, though, that really, not the foolishness, the negativity or whatever, but yeah, that's right, Claudette, tag team going in on people. It was so ridiculous, okay? But once I started realizing, okay, that day when I said I was on here for 5 or 6 hours just acting a whole fool or whatever, Reggie said, that's because you petty LaBelle Queen. Exactly. And I'm just like, okay, I am doing the absolute most, okay? But then, you know, like I said, after I started posting content that could help people or whatever, and then, you know, just always putting out content and then connecting with other people, whatever, then I just got more enlightened spiritually. But all of that other stuff was just also crazy, and it was also low vibrational. You couldn't pay me to do it again. And I can't even believe sometimes that I ever did it in the first place. I'm like, how was that so ridiculous? That's just all crazy. But like Reggie said, it's because I'm petty LaBelle. Okay? That's one habit that the queen can't shake. I'm still petty. Okay, please pay attention. So Here's the thing. The next spiritual truth is we are not responsible to convince others of their own truth. You see, you can try to lead someone down the path to spiritual enlightenment and give them pointers and encourage them and motivate them or whatever, but the initial work has to be done by them. You see, a spiritual journey is something that you take alone. Okay, you have to take that spiritual journey by yourself. You have to do the work. Other people can assist you and pour into you and try to guide you or whatever, but the work has to be done by you. Understanding what it means to love ourselves and others and becoming more loving is the most important thing that we can do as humans. We come from a source of unconditional love and light. And it is the spark from this source that brings us into being and that we carry within ourselves. We're part of the source and can never be disconnected from that infinite source of love and light from where we came from and where we will return, as long as we remember that we are spiritual beings who came from the Most High Creator. Now, when you forget that and lose sight of it, and you start dabbling in black magic or trying to conjure up demons or talking about selling your soul for fame and all of that, then you can become disconnected from the Most High, from the divine source. But you can always come back. You just have to have deliverance. You just have to change your wicked ways. But at the end of the day, sometimes we lose sight and we become disconnected from the infinite love and the source that gives us our light. And this is why people become dark. This is why people become filled with darkness. Okay? And you know what sort of people who are more likely to be attracted to darkness? Ask yourselves that. What type of people do you think are more prone to be attracted to the darkness? That will be people who have experienced trauma. That will be people who have been mistreated and abused, talked down upon, who've never been shown love or don't know how to love because it's never been shown to them. What I'm saying is, very often, it is children who are neglected, abused, mistreated, abandoned. How are they supposed to make it in this world when nobody's showing them the very things that they need to survive? They need to know how to love, and they deserve to have love given and shown to them. Children are supposed to be told, that they're a blessing, and they're supposed to constantly be reminded of their self-worth. And we speak life into them. Like the word inspiration, okay, from the Latin word inspire, to breathe into, to breathe life into. Just like in the Bible when it says, when God created Adam, he breathed breath into his nostrils, right? That's an allegory, by the way. But at the end of the day, when you speak life into someone, you motivate, encourage, and inspire them. And you help them you can prevent them from possibly becoming a product of their own environment. You can prevent them from going down the wrong path. Teach them of their worth and know your worth. Don't let people just treat you any kind of way and disrespect you and, just keep coming back lying and saying that they're sorry, because they're really not. Because when people keep doing things, make it a habit and a pattern of doing things, they're not sorry. They only tell you that to appease you because that's what they know you want to hear. But as soon as they get upset again, they go right back to doing what they were already doing and saying the nasty things they were already saying. And if you put up with it, you're just setting yourself up for failure, like I said. So we come from a source of unconditional love and light. We only cover it and forget our true essence and nature. You see, when you get disconnected from the source, when you get connected from the light and you fall into the darkness, that's when you forget the true essence of yourself and the nature. But learning to love ourselves unconditionally is key to returning to our natural state of being. Forgiveness of self and others becomes the power that frees your heart from that moment on. You don't have to convince anyone of who you are. You don't have to convince anyone of anything, as a matter of fact, because we're all spiritual beings. Becoming a lighthouse of your own truth is the best medicine for yourself, for those around you, and for the world. Silently bless the world with your love and light wherever you go and to whomsoever you meet. This way, whether anyone is interested in your spiritual journey or not, they won't be able to avoid benefiting from your radiance and who you are being in this world. And I have absolutely learned to do that. I have learned to do that because wherever I go, let me tell y'all something. Wherever I go, I'm always trying to motivate, encourage, and inspire people. I'm always trying to make people feel good about themselves. I walk past people that I don't know in the grocery store and say, "Oh, your hair looks beautiful today. Oh, I love your outfit." I just give people compliments to make them feel good. I don't have to know you, but I'm giving you positive energy. And especially if you're someone who looks like you might be going through something or you look like you're having a bad day, I'm going to say something to try to make you feel better. Now, why do I do that? That's just something I like to do because I like for people to be happy. I wish everybody could just walk around in joy and just happy. You know what I'm saying? But everybody isn't. And some people are just mean and nasty. And you can tell them something nice and they're not going to say thank you. They're not going to care. They're just going to roll their eyes and be like, why is she? But I find very often you can listen to. Now, there's some people, just like I say, I go around and say nice things. There's some people that go around and say nasty things to people. Let me tell you what I saw this lady do one day. This lady was in the store and there was a lady riding on one of those carts. And this lady was very large. Okay, she's riding on one of those carts. You know, like if you go in Kroger or Walmart, the grocery carts that you ride around in, mostly they're for the elderly people or for someone who may have a broken leg or something like that, or a disability or whatever. This lady, she didn't look disabled, but she was a big woman. Okay, and she was riding around in that cart. This woman is behind her in the line, and she says to her, "You need to get up off your big butt. That's why you're so big now, just lazy." Now, I thought she knew the woman from the way she was talking. Come to find out, she didn't even know this woman from a can of paint. The woman looked at her and just rolled off on her little grocery cart. And so the cashier said, "Ma'am," she said, "that was so mean. Why did you say that?" And she said, "Oh, because I'm having a bad day." You're having a bad day? That's what I asked her. I said, "You're having a bad day? So you said that to someone just because you're having a bad day?" She said, "Well, her big ass didn't need to be on that anyway." I said, "Excuse me? How do you know that woman doesn't have some sort of illness or disability? Just because she didn't look sick doesn't mean anything. She could have had cancer. Anything could have been going on. You don't know what was going on with that woman. You just want to assume that she's lazy because she was a bigger woman." I said, "That is just evil and low down. Who do you think you are?" Oh my goodness, it made me so mad. And I didn't even have anything to do with it. I didn't even know this lady. She wasn't even talking to me. But I was just so perplexed at the nerve. Just mean and nasty for no reason. There's people like that walking around every day. But like I said, just like there's people like that walking around, I prefer to walk around and tell people nice things and make people feel good. Okay? Ella said, "Who gave them the right?" Exactly. I mean, that you know what that told me though? That lady is miserable. She was obviously miserable. Okay. Things weren't going right in her life. Because one thing that I noticed is the people that are haters, the people that are mean and nasty, those people never have a good life. If they had things going the way they wanted and they were so happy and pleased and thrilled with their life, do you think they'd have time to be walking around going in on people who they don't even know? Who does that? Just walking around. I mean, that lady had to be a whole demon as far as I'm concerned. Okay? I mean, the nerve. She had to be a whole demon, honey. At the end of the day, that was just too much. That was too much. So, anyway, it's always good to try to spread love and positivity because that's what will return to you threefold. Just remember that what we put out is always going to come back. And remember, happiness is usually the result of having a meaningful life, not what makes life worth living in itself. Okay? It's about having a meaningful life. And don't forget that death is in fact an illusion. Because some people fear death, but there's really nothing to fear. Because at the end of the day, just as we came into this world, we do have to leave. But we're going into another realm, and that's not the end. It's simply a new beginning. So with that all being said, I'm going to conclude this broadcast. I hope you all got something out of it. Tomorrow, we're going to be talking about the dark soul night. I started to go over that today, but I don't want the live to be going on and on, for like 2 hours or whatever, because I do plan to go back on the other channel later on today, maybe around 6:30. But nonetheless, so we'll talk about dark nights or dark night souls on tomorrow. Okay? Reggie said, fear disappears with knowledge. Ooh, that's a good one, Reggie. And that is absolutely the truth. I never thought of it worded like that, but that's absolutely the truth. Because really, people often fear things that they don't know, and people often worry about things that may not ever even happen. I want y'all to think about that. People fear things that they don't know. This is what people often do. Okay? And we have to rise above fear because, the Most High doesn't give us the spirit of fear. When we fear things, where is that coming from? It's low vibration. In fact, fear is the lowest vibration. The highest vibration is love. So we should all be trying to resonate in love, not fear. And be trying to spread joy and peace wherever we go. And the next time somebody that you love, because I was telling you earlier how we say some of the harshest things to the people we love the most, supposedly. Okay, we claim that we love them the most, but we say the meanest things to them. The next time someone that you love annoys you or says something that ticks you off or whatever, bite your tongue. Okay? Think before you speak. Because the thing is, when we get into arguments, it's really nothing but a war of words. Both parties, or however many people are involved, trying to win the argument, trying to say the most vile or mean, hateful things, trying so desperately to prove their points. But at the end of the day, is it even really worth it? It usually isn't. Okay? It usually isn't. And I don't like to argue with people anyway. If you sit up here and you tell me that 5 plus 5 is 13, I'm going to say, yeah, it sure is. Okay? Who wants to argue unnecessarily? When I know some people I literally know somebody right now, and I'm not going to say who they are. There's somebody related to me, and they might be watching this channel, honey, so I'm not going to say exactly who it is, but this person specifically told me that they like to start arguments because I told them, you argue with everybody in the family. You're the common denominator. And they told me, yeah, I purposely start arguments with you all sometimes. I said, but why? Because they like to argue? Who likes to argue? Okay, who likes to argue? Reggie said, absolutely controlling our emotions, knowing that arguments are meant to. Exactly. And here's the thing. If I know you like to argue, like that person told me, honey, they can't pay me to argue with you. That's what I do. They'll be talking about themselves. Because you're not going to make me low vibration. You're not going to take away my peace. Okay. And if anything, remember this, if anything costs you your peace, then it's too expensive. Fat Boo said, I don't argue, wasted time and energy. Absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. Sheila said, I don't like to tongue wrestle with people. Not tongue wrestle. Fat Boo said, better find a hobby. I know, right? Aqua Girl Ryder said, a lot of people shaking my head, they're miserable. This is all true. And Swift said, high blood pressure. Exactly. All right. Yeah, the body knows where you're in stress. Okay. It's stressful to be arguing. Okay. It does raise the blood pressure. It absolutely does. And is it worth it? Putting stress on yourself because some fool is just trying to make you miserable because that's what they are? Anyway, with that all being said, I'm going to conclude this broadcast. I love you all to life. I hope you all got something out of it. We'll be back tomorrow to talk about dark souls. And I will probably be on the other channel at about 6:30. So listen, if you don't get a notification, please stop by the channel. Okay. Now, y'all know I'll be late sometimes. So if I'm saying 6:30 and you come on there at 6:30, you don't see anything posted, come back at 6:45 because y'all know I'll be late. But also, for some of you in the chat, I don't know if you all have been getting your emails. For some of you all, I send you your emails for the links, okay, because I know that they don't always send them out. All right. So anyway, I love you all to life. All right. Thank you, Reggie. I love you all to life. And enjoy the rest of this beautiful day. And until next time, beloveds, I will talk to you all again soon.